when you have a single circuit for compression and rebound, right? So on the front end, we're talking about compression, right? When you have a single circuit, you're forced to try to optimize it for chassis input and wheel input. And when you do that, you have to give a little on each side. It's not going to be optimum for your wheel input, and it's not going to be optimum for your chassis input. It's going to be somewhere in between. Where here, we can optimize wheel input and chassis input. So it's making two circuits. It's separating the circuits so that we can valve it for each for wheel input and chassis input.
Is this setup using the factory damper tube, the lighter weight fluid, the factory springs or some aftermarket springs, along with the Intiminators? Are you going to get a better ride if you spend twice the money on a cartridge system? And why are you not going to get a better ride out of a cartridge system?
So whether you're talking about damper rods or cartridge system, you're asking a single circuit to do two jobs. Whether it's a cartridge, whether it's a damper rod and holes, whatever it is, you're asking a single circuit to do two jobs. So sitting in front of us right now, I've just pulled a couple of examples. The blue ones here are the 49 millimeter Intimidators. And then these ones here are your 41, both for Harley Davidson. They're all broken apart right now, so we can sort of, it's important to understand exactly what the internal component is so that you can understand why it's different, why it's better, and that sort of thing. So initially, when we look at the stem of it, we remove the cover here and we see the actual inertia valve, all right? So every time your bike encounters an event, or which is technical term, a bump, right? It's going to fire that inertia valve, right?
And that valve is spring-loaded?
It is spring-loaded, so it holds it up in place. This is working on your compression circuit. So what's going to happen is, much like a conventional style shock and things like that, you'll have a shim stack in there. These are simply deflective valving, all right? So these sit on top of here. You also, in here, let's just get a little thing. So you can see that that is actually a check valve. So your return will happen on here. So it's just a little check valve in there that the shim stack sits on top of. So when the fluid, when your front end begins to compress and the fluid comes up through the damper rod, it's going to force it through that shim stack. So we'll put this together here so we can understand a little bit better. So that goes like that. So your complete Intiminator looks like this, and this will sit down on top of your damper rod, spring goes on top of it. So what happens was the fluid comes through here, through these ports right here, and acts upon those shims, these little shim stack, much like a conventional style shock. That's happening when you're on the brakes, right? Chassis input. So that's going to correct your brake dive, right? It's going to force it through that shim stack. But when you hit a bump, you hear that valve fire. It's going to open up the secondary circuit in there. So this is the stem that goes through here. You can see that there's a port through here and it exits here, right? So when this inertia valve fires down, those ports are exposed. That's your secondary circuit.
So there it is right there. So it comes through this hole right here.
Correct.
This is on a hard bump where your forks are compressing.
Right.
The valve opens up and the fluid goes through this hole.
Allowing,
so it goes very quickly.
Allowing all the normal damping to take place.
Right.
Right. And then it returns and it closes so that if you're on your brakes heavy, you're G'ing out, or you're entering or exiting a corner where that bike is compressing down on those wheels, it's forcing it through that shim stack and controlling that compression, not just diving out.